G'day guys, welcome to the Home Invest School podcast. Thank God it's Friday and you guys are probably making your way home. So great, head into the weekend. We've got a special guest coming in to talk about where the market is at the moment. He's right in the trenches there. So I thought backing up from what Nate had been talking about on Tuesday, I'd bring him in. But first, hit the like button, hit the love heart button so that we give our guests plenty of love. And also, if you're new, go to the Home Invest School podcast YouTube channel, belt that subscribe button, and hit the bell icon. So when we go live on the countdown, you're straight in here, especially on a Friday afternoon. It's a good way to drive home. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest. He's a serial entrepreneur. He is the founder of a couple of things. He's firstly the hedge fund, the investor syndicate, and then the hedge fund playbook. He's got a lot of stuff going on. He gets investors to come in and network. He has got a business where he dispositions to hedge funds. So he's got a lot of stuff going on. He's creating a massive network with people with the same mindset, and he's educating people. And we're lucky enough to get in between doing deals and doing videos, and we've got him into the studio. So his name is Ben Lovro, and welcome to the podcast, Ben. It's great to have you.
Graham, I'm humbled, man. I appreciate it as always.
Now, Ben, we go back a while, and I love getting you on because you're one of these guys that's you're doing big things, but you always got your hand on the pulse. And I wanted to bring you in for the audience today, because I think Captain Obvious is there's been a market shift. Now, a lot of the media is still trying to play it down a little bit, but I come into your inner circle during the week and come to the Zoom calls, and you've been talking about this for a while, and especially with the Hedge Fund Code, dispositioning to hedge funds, you've seen a massive change in the last couple of months, haven't you?
Oh yeah, it's been big. I think all investors across the board have had to have a major pivot.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So Nate was on here on Tuesday. And he's been talking about this for a couple of months. You've been talking about it for a couple of months. You've been trying to get the people in your inner circle, all the wholesalers and investors, to readjust. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the adjustments in prices and that you've seen. But one of the major things is the hedge funds have sort of slowed down a little bit with their buying, and a few have dropped out, haven't they? There's been some big guys drop out.
There's been a couple big players that have dropped out. I would say across the board, most of them are still in the game. They've just gotten a little bit more conservative with their bids. So they're still buying, but we'll dive into it, as we really get into the meat and potatoes. But they're waiting to establish the bottom. Once we find the bottom of the market, they turn that machine on, man, and start buying like crazy.
Yeah. And we'll dissect that, and we'll dissect what you've seen with percentage drops and all the rest of it. And we'll also go into some disposition. But before we do, Ben, I want to get the audience to get to know you like I do. I've had the pleasure of interviewing you before, and like I said, had a business and personal relationship outside of that. Do you want to just give a bit of a backstory of Ben Lovro and where it all started and how you got into real estate, and just share with the audience your journey so far?
Yeah, man. So we'll start this journey off in 2014, October 6, 2014, stepping outside of prison, right? Just got released, walking through those gates. I knew that I had a long journey ahead of me. I spent a lot of time in reflection throughout the 5.5 years that I was locked up, right? It was a great opportunity to really get me a foundation that I never had before and get me mentally, spiritually, and emotionally grounded in areas that I never was. So I say that to say my journey going through incarceration was the best thing that ever happened to me. That's where God got a hold of my heart and transformed my life from the inside out. So picking up the page, right? Walking outside of those prison doors, I knew that because of, my record and my rap sheet, it was going to be a lot more difficult for me to step into society and, go to school and get a degree that I can present to a corporate employer. Because if they're looking at they're looking at Ben Lovro in black and white without knowing my character, then I'm gonna lose every time. So I knew that I had to work twice as hard as the person next to me. About 2 days after getting out, my dad helped pack up all my stuff, and I moved across the country out here to Columbia, South Carolina, where I moved in my auntie and uncle's basement. So literally jumped out here without a parachute. Never really been to the South in my life, so it was a culture shock to say the least. And we'll just say the rest is history, right? Started waiting tables at a restaurant downtown Columbia, and I just worked relentlessly. Every single day I was working, saving, right? And I had this worker bee mentality, but I was working harder and not smarter. So the transition began to take place when I started studying and finding this vehicle called entrepreneurship, right? And after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, the entire trajectory of my life changed at that moment. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that real estate investing was the vehicle, and I was going to figure out how to do it no matter what it took.
Yeah. So just to sort of back up a little bit, you just got in a little bit of trouble. You sort of hung with the wrong crowd at college and all the rest of it, and you got in a little bit of trouble. It wasn't violent crimes or anything like that. It was more. I think you've said to me before, it was more. Got into drug related stuff and
it was drug related, but it was also violent. It was not good.
Yeah,
it was an armed robbery holding up a drug dealer.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So there you go. You learn something every day.
I was the driver, but it was man. It was not.
So you've gone from there and you've shifted across, and obviously, like you said, you obviously went through a pretty big personal transformation, being locked up, and you've got out and you've made a clear decision, right? Like you said, you found God in jail basically, and then you've got out and you've moved on from there, and then you've sort of gone, in your mind, you've gone, well, I've got a rap sheet now. What am I going to do? So how long did it take to sort of figure that process out, Ben? Because that's probably the most daunting thing. Like, you could change, you could be on the straight and narrow, but you've always got that sort of stigma. So how long did it take for you to work your way out of that till you got to the real estate part, from waiting tables across to there?
Ooh, that's a good question, man. I'll say this. Vision doesn't always come out fully formed. So I feel like every step and every leg inside of this journey, it's unfolded piece by piece, right? And what I mean by saying that is, got out, started working relentlessly. And because I was programmed just to go to work my tail off for tips. Stepped out making $45,000 a year, which is more than I ever made in my lifetime, right? But I was working, trading time for money. And when I started to read a little bit more and work on myself, reading different business books, entrepreneurship books, I realized that there was a better way, right? That you don't have to be constantly spinning on this hamster wheel, hustling. Like a lot of the world right now is saying hustle, right? Hustle's like a key word, right? It's a mantra that a lot of people like to adopt, but it kind of strays us away from the main thing if we truly want to scale and elevate our life, right? Because you can get caught in this hamster wheel, and when you're hustling, but you're not focusing on the right things because you lack the clarity, then you're never going to accomplish the results you're seeking, right? So where I'm going with this is we're constantly growing and constantly evolving in this life. So going from working a lot to reading, picking up new insights, new ideas, and new strategies, I realized that there is a better way, right? Started attending some local meetup groups, met some great people here in the local community, some investors that were making some big moves. So I realized that I needed to find the right people who were already accomplishing the results that I was seeking, right? So I sought out guidance. I sought out wise counsel. I also realized that I can't just show up to these people's doorsteps, or I can't just invite them to lunch and expect just to consume all this knowledge and information, but I actually had to figure out how I can add value to what they're already doing, So, go to lunch and, hey, Mr. Investor, just love what you're doing. It's my goal to eventually run my own business and invest in real estate as well. Just wanted to ask you how I can add any value to what you're already doing, right? Sent me in the trenches, went on a couple appointments, and learned the ropes. Started from that bottom, and then I started to invest some of the hard-earned money that I had acquired, and I started paying for education. Right, bought a few online courses, surrounded myself in a mastermind group, and slowly but surely, piece by piece, we started to build. And it went from, took 6 months to get my first deal. When I had that check in my hand, it made me a believer. Like, holy cow, this vehicle real estate is a thing. And at that point, I realized, what if I could take this check and this same payday and multiply it times 10, right? And if I can multiply that times 10 a month, then it's not going to take that long to become a millionaire, right? So anyways, I just committed to simple daily disciplines. I surrounded myself with the right people, and I chased after my vision relentlessly for many years.
Yeah, because it's amazing from my perspective. I know the modern day Ben Lovro now, and that's who I've met. And I know your story. I haven't, I didn't know all aspects of your story, but I knew that, and I love the story because it's basically starting from here and just working your way. Now I know the Ben now, and I know that it's funny that you said from day dot when you started educating yourself, reading books, you said, I'm going to start adding value. Well, that's what you do now. That's the Ben that I know. Everything, the organisations that you've created, you just add value. I just don't see anyone added value. Like I think it was Wednesday, I was in one of the hedge fund calls, and you're educating, you're doing all this stuff to add value. So that's obviously been one of the pillars of your rise. Firstly, was I add value first. I give first before I receive back. And then I noticed also something else that's a big one is you just kept investing in yourself and hanging around with people that were further down the track than you've been. So That's obviously skyrocketed really quick, hasn't it? That's been how you've gone from there up to there in a short period of time. And that's something that is a theme with successful people, is they just get on the bike and they just try and get scale really quickly. So that sort of gets you up to the modern day 2.0 Ben that I know now. And that sort of, the audience can get like that is a pretty, I don't know, what's the actual, how many years was that from zero to where you are now? Like how
I got released 2014. We're going on 8 years now, almost 8 years in October.
So, which is still fairly quick to what you've got built now, is amazing. So it's a credit to you, mate. I can't hear that story enough because it's true. Just, it's like the Rocky story. Eye of the tiger just rose up and grit and grace,
baby.
But I like the way you also, Ben, that you're saying with grit. People are saying, hustle and grit. You've got to be smarter than that. You've got to grind at the start, but then, like you said, you went the next level with people in masterminds. You invested that money back into masterminds, and they obviously were telling you, that's all good. I love your work ethic, but you've got to use up here now. You've got to develop here, and that's going to scale you quicker. So that's where you're at now, and everything you do now is about scaling to the next level and thinking through it. And I actually saw one of your videos today, and you were saying that what you see in reality happens twice. It happens in here first, and you've got to cultivate it and believe it, and then it happens a second time in the physical world. So that's a great way to put it. I think that's fantastic, and it explains it quite simply. So, all right, that's good. We've the audience, we've given them a journey to where Ben is now. Now, I wanted to get into, I mean, you wear a few hats, but probably the broader term is dispositions. You're a disposition specialist, aren't you? You're sort of more focused on that. Not saying that you don't do other stuff, but that's what your bread and butter's been for a few years, under dispositions.
Yeah.
Now, we'll break that down firstly into the hedge funds. Now, you saw a bit of a trend early on. You jumped into the hedge fund early. Was that hard to infiltrate that? And how did you build that up fairly quickly to be able to get to know and get to be, I guess, respected and known by the hedge funds?
It's a really good question, man. So hedge funds have been around for a while. Even before 2008 correction, there was private equity groups and quote unquote hedge funds that started to get into the real estate investing space. Started buying some houses, and then 2008 the bottom fell out, and a lot of these funds lost their shirts. Right, a lot of funds picked up and started buying right around that bottom, right around the dip, and started building a little bit of traction and momentum from there. I believe hedge funds started to get introduced to wholesaling, right? Lead flow and wholesaling, probably early 2012, 14, somewhere around that time. So shortly into my journey, I was introduced to one local private equity group, right? Not a big hedge fund by any means compared to what we see today. But we started doing some deals with them, and they paid more money than your local landlord fix and flip investor, right? So if I found a wholesale deal, when you're talking, $5,000-$10,000 margin, but a fund might pay 15 or 20 more, obviously you're gonna move the property to the higher bidder. So anyways, been doing business with funds for quite some time, but we never saw the hyper aggressive model until after COVID. So last year, 2021, like January, February, was where these big giants, this is where Wall Street started to infiltrate the single family real estate market, because these mutual funds identified single family real estate as an asset class, right? So investing that equity money into stocks and Wall Street, they're starting to buy up Main Street. So we caught this trend through, I'm a part of a high level mastermind, a couple of my best friends in there that we came together and we shared some contacts and basically got one another inside of the door with some of these giants, these institutional giants. And going from selling a wholesale deal for 70-75% to seeing these institutions paying 100% in prime time was eye-opening, and that's where the aha moment went off in my eyes. Like, holy cow, I've never seen a cash buyer pay this much money for a wholesale deal.
Yeah, it was unheard of, wasn't it? It was unheard of. Yeah.
And so we caught this trend, right? And we started building our business on the back of that. Building our business. When the whole world was freaked out and COVID shut down, the government started printing money like it's going out of style. We saw that as an opportunity. So we positioned ourselves, because we had these big contacts and we have an efficient running company. You got to have a smooth transaction coordination process in place. You have to cleanly understand the buy box and know exactly what appetite these funds have and what type of assets they're looking for, right? In order to put it together and serve it up on a platter, submit it into the system, and get the bids going through. So over the past 18 months, we built a dispositions wing, which we actually put a training curriculum together called the Hedge Fund Code. So a lot of you watching this know us by, like the Hedge Fund Code. You guys sell, wholesale deals for top price. So that was amazing until the bottom falls out, right?
Yeah.
To your point, funds are still buying. There's a couple big guys that dropped out, but all the funds are still buying. They've just gotten a little bit more conservative with their bid since the market shift.
They've pulled it back in a little bit. They've pulled it back in a little bit, just seeing what's happening, sitting there. They haven't, pulled out, but they just pulled it in. So really, you cracked the code twice. You mentioned before, Ben, that you met, one person, then you've obviously duplicated that on a smaller level. And then after or during COVID, you had the light bulb went off and went, wow, I haven't seen this before. So you sort of cracked another code. You took it to another level, and that's how you built the foundations of your business off that unseen thing where people were paying 100% of market value. So you sort of cracked it twice, didn't you? It was almost like you got in the market, you went, wow, this is a good system. And then all of a sudden, because you're already set up, you then got the second wave, which was the big institutional buyers coming in. You've set up and you've built a business around it. And like you said, it's still there. It's still there, but it's just you've got to pivot and adjust. And that's what I was going to ask you now. Like we touched on it earlier in the show. Sort of what percentages have you seen drop off? Like, have you seen? Has it been a massive fall or just a medium fall at this stage?
So that's going to be market specific for sure. We've altogether, I'll drop the strategy and what we've done. And we've gone from focusing on the higher appreciation markets, right? The super booming areas, your Florida markets, right? Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, Miami, Charlotte, Raleigh, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia. These were the hot pots where the Wall Street funds were just eating the houses up. Well, when the market turns, they went from 100% to overnight paying like 80 to 85%, which is very significant considering that it's hard to get a deal even at 80%. Sellers are still expecting the moon, right? But the institutions aren't willing to pay as much. So it challenged us to really dive in deep and pivot and switch our entire strategy. So we're still in the big markets, right? We got a couple closing in Orlando this week. Well, one closed today and one closes next week. But what we're seeing is the higher yield markets. So instead of focusing on these big appreciation markets, again, where we were getting 100% ARV, but it dropped to 80 to 85, the higher yield markets, known as tertiary markets, they're your medium-sized linear markets that they don't see quite as much appreciation, right? But they also don't dip as much when the market turns. They're cash flow markets, and it's a safe place to invest for buy and hold investors. So we've switched from the appreciation areas to targeting these tertiary markets, such as Little Rock, Memphis, Augusta, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Kansas City, Missouri, and St. Louis, Missouri. Right now, the higher yield markets, the linear markets, medium-sized markets are the play because we're seeing these funds come in around 90, sometimes 90 and some change, right? Maybe 90, maybe as high as 95% if the rents make sense. But again, it's just literally being able to pivot overnight. And that's in this world of data and technology, it's easy to do, right? Just pull some new data, pull a new list, tell the people inside of our training ecosystem what the play is. Like, hey guys, time to kind of flip your mindset and go after different areas. I'm not going to say it wasn't painful because the first month of adapting, holy cow, we had $150,000 of pipeline revenue just tank.
Yeah.
Right. Literally overnight. And these were deals we were like set to close. So it was hard, man. It really challenged us. But the play was just to really focus on where the ball is going, right? Instead of just playing checkers, we want to be playing chess, right? We want to foresee into the future and be able to already be playing 5-10 moves ahead.
Yeah. You saw that early and you've made the adjustment and you've gone right. The appreciation markets, let's move across to the cash flow markets. You had on Wednesday's Hedge Fund Code Zoom, you had cash flow. You had your shirt cash flow. And I noticed and I wrote in the chat, cash flow is king at the moment because a lot of people in the industry are saying that you've got to go to more middle class, like working class areas now where there's solid cash flow, there's good returns, people need the housing. Rather than these big appreciation markets, they're going to drop in value. That's what a lot of the people are saying. Yep. So you jumped onto that pretty early, and that's why I wanted to bring in because you're in the trenches. It's like a lot like what Nate's been saying for the last 3 months. He's seen it out there in the industry, and this is why it's good to talk to people who are actively doing this as a business rather than maybe going to a seminar and someone they haven't got the finger on the pulse. So that's why I wanted to bring in. Get the real gold nuggets off your Ben, straight from the horse's mouth. So that's awesome. And I reckon a few people got their pen and paper out and wrote down a few of those markets. So you'll see a big spike in those markets now because you've let the cat out of the bag. But that's good. Yeah. That's part of what you do is you share that information. So guys, you got a gold nugget there off Ben, and a lot of the people, like I said, that have got their finger on the pulse are predicting this, and it's just common sense. And a lot of people have also been through a cycle like this before and they've seen the same thing happen. So there's some good advice for you. Now, what I wanted to do, I don't want to, because you get asked about hedge funds, or that's probably every time you do an interview, it's about the hedge funds. Everyone's asking you, poking you for stuff on there, some secrets on the hedge fund. But dispositions in general, I mean, have you always focused on dispositions, or was that something that you just broke off and it just happened naturally?
No, man, I'll actually say that when we really started in the business, our primary focus was acquisitions. So we start, like, my first and primary lead generation when we started, and still to this day, was cold calling. But when
Yep.
we started cold calling, this was before cold calling was really sexy, right? When I say really sexy, obviously all marketing goes in trends, but this is before Brent Daniels' TTP was out, right?
Yeah.
Before they had all these cold calling trainings and the predictive dialer, right? First it was Mojo Dialer, then you had Call Tools that came out, and then recently over the past 2 years, Batch Dialer came out with their tool, ZenCall, a couple other names. But it wasn't like mainstream stuff. Plus, in order to skip trace data, in order to send out a list and get a record back where you got a property address and the owner's name, I remember it used to cost $1. I think, what was that skip tracing company name? Lead Gina or Skip.
Oh yeah.
Some name.
Skip Genie. Yeah.
Literally, you're paying it like $1. And then quickly it moved where you could append, like bulk append, a lot more data for 20 cents. But 20 cents was like the standard for 2 years straight. And it was hard to get more. It was hard to get cheaper data than that, even if you're paying like 10,000 records. And then fast forward to where we are today. We have an internal skip tracing company, betterskip.com, that we are able to resell data at 6 cents a record, which is insane, right?
Yep, which is a good price.
But it's just technology has just changed the game, and it's made the accessibility for information and data points much, much easier than it was. So anyways, that's a big rabbit hole. To answer your question directly, acquisitions is where we built it.
So you started with acquisitions. Yeah, that's interesting. And then you've gone across to dispositions, and then now that's the brand, isn't it? That's the company and the hedge funds, and then you do other dispositions, like you also do stuff outside the hedge funds as well.
Yep.
And just to explain, I'll get you to explain it, Ben, how it looks within the investor syndicate and the hedge fund code. Explain sort of how that works, like how people come in and they operate with you, and that works, just for people that have never heard of it.
Yeah. So our company works with the biggest nationwide hedge funds in the industry, all of them, right? All the Wall Street funds we are connected and we do business with. So we leverage that relationship, right? And we've created a training curriculum, training ecosystem, where we bring in wholesalers from all around, right? Wholesalers that have great deals, wholesalers that might need a little bit better deals, right? And need to be groomed up on what to look for. So inside of the investor syndicates, like the branding, right? That's the parent company, but Hedge Fund Code is just a product inside of our organization, where every single week on Wednesday at 2 p.m., we host the Hedge Fund Code call, where we have, I'd say, 40 to 50, maybe 60 on a good day, right? People just on a live Zoom call, and I just basically share buy box information. When the hedge funds were hitting really good, I was just pointing our partners to, hey, this market is hitting. If you can find a deal here, they might even be paying 110%, when the market was really good. So anyways, between training courses and modules inside of our ecosystem, live Zoom calls, we empower real estate wholesalers with the tools that they need to go find deals in these hot hedge fund markets.
Yeah, that's a great description. You're bringing other, and this is one question I've never asked you before. I probably should have asked you. How many wholesalers do you deal with? Is it more than 50 or 60? Like, is there more that don't come to the calls? Because that's a lot of people, bringing deals in and that, isn't it? That's a lot to manage. So I'm sure your team's just flat out all the time.
Yeah, so we'll say this. It goes in cycles, right? There's a couple thousand in our ecosystem. but it goes in cycles. We see some wholesalers that are like in the trenches and submitting a ton of deals, and then they'll fall off for a few months. And the next thing you know, they're back in, you start seeing some submissions coming through and they're back on the calls. But I'd say just like a lot of life, it ebbs and flows. Consistent, that's hard to answer. To be 100% transparent, I don't see the disposition side of the business as much now as I used to, because we've built that pillar, right? So my wife, who's a real estate agent, understands the industry very well. Once I established the systems and the structure, she was able to take that framework and really build it, right? So we got Lisa and we have Sarah, who are the full-time dispositions department, and they know the code, and the system's built out where when we have a submission that comes through, they can quickly analyze it and then send it to the appropriate dispo, right? To the appropriate fund or local buyers in order to get it picked up.
So what you're saying on record in public is Lisa's the brains of the outfit.
Lisa runs my business straight up. We got a running joke. Like I'll be back here in the studio recording videos and, playing around and stuff. I mean, there's a lot more to it. I'm a true visionary, right? Where my head's in the clouds all the time. I'm a dreamer. I like to think big picture and figure out how I can bring some of these big ideas to reality, right? But for every great visionary, you need a strong foundation and a strong integrator to help propel and carry that vision forward.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you've just nailed that for sure. And that's what Lisa is. Lisa grounds it and runs the team, and you're out there trying to basically be ahead of the game, like what you've just shared with us with the hedge fund. You see these things before anyone else sees them, and that's been your strength. So that's what makes a great team is different people with different skill sets and strengths. So yeah, that's awesome. And I just wanted to ask you some, a bit of a generic question, but because you've been in dispositions for a while now, what are sort of like your top 5 tips? Because there's a lot of people that'll be watching this that are fairly new and they're trying to do the acquisitions thing and the dispositions. And we all know what happens. Usually you focus that much on the deal that all of a sudden you get a deal and you go, oh, what do I do with it? What's your top 5 tips that you learned sort of, from the early days when you're probably doing a lot yourself and went across to dispositions up to now running a dispositions company? What are the 5 most important things or little tips that you could give people that are listening?
Tip number 1, begin with the end in mind. And what I mean by this is we reverse engineer everything. We know the buyer's appetites in the markets that we're active in before we ever start marketing and before we ever pull a list, right? So we're very clear on the target that we're aiming for. What is the property characteristics, right? 3-bed, 2-bath, 1965 and newer, 1,100 square feet and greater, right? Simple. Begin with the end in mind. Have the buyer appetite lined up, right? So if you're a full-time dispo, obviously, well, you don't just have a one-trick pony and rely on a single buyer or a couple different hedge funds. Like you got to have an ecosystem built out. For acquisitions teams, know the appetite and master the buy box that you're looking for, right? That's 1. Tip number 2, you got to be able to pivot at any moment, right? And this past couple months has been a true example of that, where there's a lot of people that I'm sure are going to have to go back to work, right? Where we're coming out of unicorn season. That's what I call it, right? Because record low interest rates, money's abundant. Government's just printing money.
Hang on, there's me rainbows and unicorns cup. I'm going to throw that out now. That's gone.
Yeah. We're coming out of unicorn season, man. So a lot of wholesalers got started in the middle of this market, and it was just too good, right? Almost like didn't even seem real how much money some of these funds were paying for houses. But now that the market has turned, time to put back on our traditional wholesaling hats and find a little bit better deals, right? There's still big guys that are paying a lot more than your local investors, but you still got to get better deals than you were 2 months ago, right? In its simplest form. Tip number 3 is you got to have tools. You got to have tools and you got to have systems, right? If you don't have an effective email list or a dispo system or a CRM platform, then you're going to miss the mark, right? And you're going to be unorganized and you're going to miss things, which that's a piece that actually challenged us, which one of our newer endeavors, we have a CRM that's coming out next week. But it started with the need that we had in-house, right? We needed better organization, not only on the acquisition side, but the dispositions. So we had to build a tool that fit into our structure, right? Where we could facilitate these transactions and process more deals, right? Because we're doing more volume efficiently. So you got to have a tool that you know how to use, right? Not just having a tool, but you got to know how to use it.
Which you're about to launch now, aren't you? And I'll give it a plug because I know in the home invest world and the social media blueprint world, Marla has done exactly the same thing for the CRM and all the things associated with Facebook and all that. So probably doesn't clash too much. Yours is more associated with, like you said, traditionally pulling lists and marketing, outreach marketing to people. So very similar. You've done exactly what Marla has done within Nate's organization. He's built your own that works for what you guys actually do. And then you share it with the people within your organization, and then you take it out to the wider market. So you get, I don't think I'll get the sack off Nate for you giving it a plug. You can give it a plug. What's the name of it? It's
Market Pro.
Pro. So if anyone wants to look at that,
Pro
it'll be coming out.
MarketProCRM.com. It's an automation tool, right? It's got everything from voice ILP, phone numbers, text, email, ringless voicemails integrated into a seamless automation process. And the goal is just to get us our time back, right? So you're not chasing leads and chasing sellers, but this automated drip sequence just keeps on hitting them on autopilot.
So that's a huge part of number 3 that you've said is if you haven't got things like that in place now, even if you're just a small solopreneur, you've got to have that to get your time back to do other stuff, don't you? So you can put more time into marketing, or you can put more time into social media outreach and all that sort of stuff. So that's a huge one. And it's just huge similarities. I'm just seeing, I'm going to have to introduce you to Nate because you two guys are just running on parallel, different genres, but and all these things are what's helped both of you guys build successful businesses. So that's awesome. And go to number 4. Hopefully you can get to 5 because usually people run out by about 4. They go, I don't know, but just go as long. Just think of any other key points that that you can share with us.
Let's say number 4, man. Lean on your network. Proximity is power. A lot of us as investors, and myself, it started off where I used to have a deal, and I used to be like anti-JV. I used to be so prideful in being able to find my own consistent deals that I'd look at these people that were marketing JV things and be like, you can't find your own deal? Needless to say, my mindset has completely shifted, right? Because the way that I look at joint venture relationships, it's 100% different than I used to view it. But knowing that you have the power inside of your network, literally you have the master key that can open up any opportunity that can help sell deal that you might be sitting on and stuck on moving because you're just too prideful, too stuck in your ways, and you're not willing to leverage the power and the network of other people.
Yeah, and I mean, COVID just blew that up, didn't it? Blew up that whole networking thing, blew up the virtual wholesaling, virtual investing. I know people that have got big brands in lease options, and they've just gone nationwide now. And there are students all over the country doing it, and they're doing it virtually. It's just been within a 2-year period, it's just blown up. So, you've thrown some good gold nuggets out for us, Ben. And once again, like I said, it's sort of echoing a lot of stuff that a few people that I listen to have been saying. And that's why I wanted to get you on, because the more people hear it, the more they go, oh, well, it's not just a rumor. These are what people on the at ground zero are talking about now. So we'll leave you at 4, Ben. We don't want to strain you too much. You've had a big day, so we'll leave you at 4. But they're 4 key tips, guys. Go back and watch the replay. Ben's giving you 4 tips. If you're trying to build up your buyers list and you're trying to build up your disposition side of your business, that's what Ben does for a living. It's his bread and butter. He's been doing it for years, and he's been highly successful at it. So go back and watch that and write those down, as well as the markets that he shot out before. Go back and write them down. We've got a bit of homework to do, Ben. But that's cool. I won't pick your brain anymore. We usually get sidetracked about 5 minutes in on an interview, Ben, about mindset, because you're so passionate about mindset, and the people within your organization, you drill into them that they've got to keep investing in themselves and investing in building their mind. Their mind is where all the power is. So, you touched on it before about what you did. You read books, you went into masterminds, and you started hanging out with people that were, way ahead of you, and they sort of dragged you up. Was there any other things that you did? Was there any other little hacks that you did to really fast track yourself with your mindset to get your mind in a great place?
I would say it all begins in the morning. My morning time is sacred, meaning if I don't get my mindset routine in first thing in the morning, the rest of my day is shot.
Yep.
Because what it does when I wake up and I can pray and meditate, read, open up a page of a book, open up my journal, get at least 2 pages of journaling down each day. If I don't do that, I'm going to step into the rest of my day in a reactive state.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a difference between reactive and a proactive state. Reactive is every situation that comes at you, you just react to it, right? And it just pushes you around. Where when you're in a proactive state, you control the tempo and the temperature of your life. So you can have, angry sellers, lawsuits, freaking lost deals, foundation issues on the house, whatever the case might be. You got all these different things that are coming at you. But because your mind is centered and it's in that space, you're going to be deflecting those arrows left and right because you're running the show. You're the temperature. You're setting the temperature in your own life and not allowing the distraction, the chaos everywhere to control where you're going. So I'd say morning is everything, man. You got to win the morning, you win the day.
Success habits. Habits. I think Dean Graziosi's got a book called Success Habits, and it's about your morning routine and starting your mind and just pulling the weeds out in the morning and going forward. So that's another gold nugget, Ben. That's another theme. The amount of people I talk to that say that is my number one thing. When I get up in the morning, I've got to do this first. I've got to put all this first. And then, because like you said, the stuff that you would have to deal with, people wouldn't have a clue of half the stuff that you would have to deal with in your position. You'd have stuff coming at you all the time, wouldn't you? So you've got to be prepared and you've got to be in a good state to be able to deal with that.
That's right. You have to.
Yep. All right, mate. Well, we're up to nearly 45 minutes now, so that's the show. So as per usual, we just get on a bit of a rant and we just we sort of wrap and we we probably haven't gone off onto mindset and all that stuff as much as we usually do, but that's awesome. You've just laid a great foundation down for people, especially with the dispositions, especially with how to set it up and all the rest of it. But the main theme that I take out of it is you've got to learn how to pivot and you've got to constantly be networking and looking to grow your network and invest back into your business and yourself. So I reckon people will, over the weekend, check this out. Right, I'm sure you've given them a couple of gold nuggets with the markets, and some of them tips are amazing. And as I say, there's a lot of similarities with a lot of the people that are really crushing it in the business. With what you've just said. You've just said exactly the same stuff. So there you go, guys. We've had Ben come into the Home Invest School podcast. And like I said, because of Ben Lovro, you guys have been schooled. You've been schooled down here. So we'll sign out. I'll let Ben go because I'm sure he's got another 100 things to do to finish his Friday off before he heads into the weekend. So thanks, Ben. It's always a pleasure to have you in. I just want to thank you for sharing your story as well. I mean, that's an inspirational story. And you never hold back. You tell it as it was, and the redemption and the way that you've built your life back up, and to be I just think you're an awesome guy, and I love networking with you. And I love hanging out with you. And as you said, when I come down to South Carolina, we'll be doing a mastermind. We'll get a mastermind together and get some creative thinking going. So appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I'm sure the viewers will. Anyone who watches this, smash the like button, put some questions, and if there's anything you want to know, I'll relay it back to Ben, and and let you know. But Ben, you're a champion. Thanks for coming on and sharing all that with us and letting us know what's happened in the market in the trenches. So I'll let you go. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up soon, mate.
Sounds good, Graham. Love your platform. Love the movement you guys are creating. Keep up the amazing work. You guys are changing
no dramas,
lives.
mate. Beautiful. All right, Ben. See you later. See you guys. Have a great weekend.
Peace.